Now we are recording.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. If there is, um, so I was just going to talk briefly about Occupy Streams Map, which is a pretty quick hack that I put together to map all the various live streams around the world at various occupations. So I got started on this with starting with the web page occupystreams.org, and this is the the source data for the full list of live streams that I'm using. I'm not adding any other live streams other than the ones that are listed on this page. And so the basic hack is really simple. It's just take the whole list of streams that are on the occupystreams.org page, and there's a lot of them. There's a few hundred, or a couple hundred, and geocode the names of all these things, like Huntsville, Ventura, Winnipeg, France, Edinburgh, and then once those are all geocoded, just put those on a map. So it's really just like 1, 2, 3 like that. It's pretty simple. So to do this, I put together a Python script to scrape this page to pull out the links to all the various live streams and Ustreams and Justin TV streams, and then to use online geocoding services to look up the name of the city. And for those that don't have a straightforward name or a name that wasn't easy to geocode, I just manually coded those particular few. And then I used open source JavaScript web map API to put together the map. And so here's the map itself. It's just OpenStreetMap data on a leaflet map with all the things there. So I put together this Etherpad page here. It's I don't know if we can send out the URL to the IRC channel. So I'm just there, I just sent to the IRC channel the URL, but this is just a brief couple points of the few things that you might be interested in if you wanted to put together this sort of map hack. So the source code for everything I did is on GitHub. That's github.com/yourself/occupystreamsmap. Yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Coding with yourself, etc. And so basically there are three or four big steps, three really to start with, to getting something like this to work. The first part is scraping to get the data. Second part is geocoding to turn your data into latitudes and longitudes that you can use with the Web Maps API. Mm-hmm. And then the third part is just mapping. And so the scraping, there's really no one solid answer for the right way or wrong way to do scraping, but it's just basically the process of looking for patterns, and once you recognize those patterns, writing scripts to use them for you. So in this case, if you look at the original Occupy Streams web page, it's pretty simple what the pattern might be. I use Firefox debugging tools, Firebug, in order to do this. But if you look at all these links to streams, they all have the same pattern. They're a link, an anchor tag, that has this item/occupy something. And they all start with occupy. And so you can just do a simple regular expression on anything that's a link, and then look at the name Occupy Las Vegas, and that becomes a thing that you can start to geocode. And one thing I found that when you're doing web scraping like this, you might be writing scripts to pull web pages down, and you can end up hitting the servers really hard because you're constantly pulling these pages down. And this especially gets problematic if you're using geocoding services like Google's, where there are actually API limits. So usually when I'm doing scraping like this, one of the first steps I'll do is set up a little tool that'll let me cache any page that I download. So I only ever download each page once during that session when I'm doing the scraping. And then I can take the time to sort of iterate and fine-tune my regular expressions and other stuff to pull out the data.
Do you ever use tools like ScraperWiki?
I haven't used ScraperWiki, but a lot of people do. And they probably have a lot of this stuff already done for you, but I just hadn't used it before, so I started from scratch. But it's relatively simple tools, so if you're a programmer, it's pretty straightforward to do it. I'm not sure if ScraperWiki makes this a whole lot easier.
Mostly what it does is just it's a clear location for people to share scraping scripts.
Right.
So if you've already developed a way to scrape a particular site, and other people might be interested in also scraping,
sure.
Occupystreams.org.
Yeah,
they can just do a quick search on it, and then they would just work your scrape.
Cool. Should look into that. So the next step is geocoding. Once you have the names of places, and there are a variety of different geocoding services out there. For this script, I used Google's, which may or may not be the best choice. Yahoo also offers some geocoding services, and CloudMate offers some too. The reason why Google might not be the best choice is that they actually have pretty restrictive terms of service on their API. And the terms of service say that if you're using their geocoding API, you're supposed to only use that to put things on a Google map. And you're not allowed to use that for private databases and other things like that. So if you want to respect those terms of service, you might not want to use Google for doing your geocoding. I hear Yahoo is a better choice for this kind of stuff, but in this case, in this quick hack, I just used Google. And it's pretty straightforward. Google used to require you to have API keys and that sort of thing, but they don't require that anymore with the latest version of their Maps API. The other providers that I'm aware of do require that you register an API key and that sort of thing in order to use their services. And I did find that in a number of cases I had to hard code exactly what the location would look like. Like in some cases it was misspelled, like Wall Street. And in other cases there were just other terms in the name that didn't make sense to a geocoding search. So especially with a data set of this size, when you're only talking about a couple hundred or a few hundred results, you could easily end up with a list of 20 or 30 different things that you've just hard-coded, which is no problem, really. The next step is just mapping. And there are a huge number of mapping libraries out there now. A lot of people just use Google Maps. I prefer to use the free libraries where I can. Leaflet is a newer JavaScript mapping library made by CloudMate. CloudMate is a company that basically they're building a business around rendering OpenStreetMap data and adding services to it, like geocoding services and map data storage services and that sort of stuff. And they also put together this JavaScript library. It's smaller, faster, and a little bit prettier than OpenLayers, which is the sort of venerable player in the open source JavaScript mapping world. Leaflets,
but are they're open, or
yeah,
it's just open APIs, or it's free software?
So CloudMate has open APIs to their tiles with an API key and with API limits. Open APIs to geocoding services and other stuff like that with an API key with limits potentially. The JavaScript library is BSD licensed and you can use it for free anywhere. It's basically the same sort of process to put things on any of these libraries. It's basically something like you're creating icons with the thumbnails of the images that you want to have on there and then putting those on the map. One of the things that always becomes an issue when you're dealing with putting a lot of data on a map like this is when things overlap with each other. And that's one place here where in this hack I did kind of a dirty hack to get around it. But, if you get two icons exactly on top of each other, you can only click on one of those icons. And there are a couple of different approaches that people take to this problem. There's one of the approaches is one that PadMapper uses. This is a apartment search service that is Google Maps based. but they do an approach that's a little bit fancier and harder to code up, which is actually making the icons move around and disambiguate themselves when you click on multiple icons. This is loading pretty slowly, but I just wanted to show that strategy for disambiguating.
So does it randomly displaces them by a little bit?
Yeah, well, so it's PadMapper does this dynamic thing. It's unfortunate that it speaks so slow. Let's see if I can find it there. Load another one while it's. This is a different strategy. I'll come back to the PadMapper one in a second if it ever gets there. This is a strategy that I used it's one that OpenLayers uses, and another mapping library that I worked with uses this strategy, where you cluster things into a point that has multiple things. So here we can paginate between 4 different things. And if we zoom out from this, then they sort of auto-cluster into larger groups. This sort of clustering strategy makes sense when you aren't doing something like having a custom icon. But if you have a custom icon which is meaningful, like the thumbnail for a stream, what do you show for the spot? I mean, you could collapse those into a single circle, but that would be maybe less usable. So here's what PadMapper does. And it's loading real slowly. So I clicked on this one, and it sort of expanded into 3 different things. They just sort of move themselves around. That's kind of hard to do. So for Occupy Streams Map, I just did the simplest sort of thing I could do, which is I just tracked when I had already put an icon at a particular location, and if I had, I just moved its longitude over by 0.02 degrees. So it's really dirty, it's really ugly, but it just does the job of spreading things out. And so that way, if you go to some place that has a lot of things in one spot, like Boston does right now. There we go. So it just shoved these 3 apart from each other a little bit, because they're 0.2 degrees of longitude off. And that's less accurate, but in this case it doesn't matter because we're only getting down to city accuracy with any of this stuff. One thing that I found with the live streams, Livestream itself has a nice thumbnail API that has live updates and that sort of thing. So you can make your thumbnail for live streams actually update with what's currently showing. So I guess this one's doing reruns of Chomsky's event. Justin TV doesn't do that, or it's less usable. I couldn't find any thumbnail API for Ustream, and so that's why on this map all the Ustream icons are just Ustream. Yeah. There might be something that you can use, but I couldn't figure one out. I guess the last bit of this is just the geo search for being able to zoom into a particular place. And for this, I just used CloudMade's geocoding service. And it's pretty nice because unlike Google Maps, it doesn't have these sort of usage restrictions that you're only supposed to use it with Google Maps and that sort of thing. But its accuracy isn't super awesome. So like if I search for Paris, it takes me to Paris, North America. That's up in Ontario. So that's not great. You would probably want Paris to go to Paris, France first, where there are actually a couple of streams. But it's good enough for most purposes. And that's pretty much it.
Cool. I just was looking for the Ustream API, and someone has a workaround for the there's no API, and it's supposed to get in the IRC.
Okay, so perhaps so we will post this with the Etherpad. I think it's much more clear. We have already posted it, but I think with the Etherpad, there are all the steps clarified and everything. And I think it will be great for other people to do. So I think we're closing now, and then we will perhaps come back in a while.
Thanks, Charlie.
Sure.
Thank you.